Hey, insiders, what do prolific filmmakers Taylor Hackford, Jason Blum, and artists such as Diane Warren, Connor Oberst, and Paul Oakenfold all have in common? Our next guest, music supervisor Andy Ross of Exit Strategy Productions. We discuss the most actionable steps you can take to get your music placed into film and television, and some of the biggest misconceptions about the role of music supervisors, and much, much more. Coming up. We managed to catch up with music supervisor Andy Ross. Andy, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. I love what you're doing, and it's really useful for people to be informed.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. The first question I want to ask you is one of, in your own life, do you have a conscious memory of deciding that the music business was going to be your professional path, or did it just happen through another kind of way?
Good question. I was in a band at school, left school. My parents wanted me to go to college. I was like, I want to be in a band. So I ended up leaving school to be in the band. Band didn't do very well. Friends of mine became successful. The managers went on to manage Radiohead. The other friend of mine went on to support Prince and Michael Jackson at Wembley. So I was thinking, I'm playing in bars and getting left behind here. So then I had to make a conscious effort to give up my musical career and think, okay, now I have a chance to work in the industry that I love. And it started out with management and progressed from there.
Okay. Was there a film or any kind of books in that process for you that you found particularly inspiring when you were coming into this field?
I think originally I was always into music and albums and Bowie and listening to the whole albums and was obsessed with soul and just loved music. I loved movies, but not as much as I loved music. I'd say it was sort of 60-40. But then seeing a film like Apocalypse Now with the music in it, I mean, those songs never sounded as good as they did, you know, in that movie. So then when the music industry kind of diluted and dissolved, I was realizing that my passion was music to picture. And it was also a world where you got paid money, which was unusual, you know, because record companies normally collect it and keep it and it trickles down. So I've realized the value financially of that for my artists, but also the sum of the parts for the music to picture is often phenomenal. You know, it just takes it to another level.
Completely. And you're now working in music supervision.
Yeah, I'm working in music supervision, but I was working for a company that financed music investments in films. So they would make an offer to a producer to buy the original music rights to a movie, which is a very new model and was met with antagonism in some areas, but it was a new thing and it is a way forward and it will continue to happen. So often I'm finding producers whose films are in trouble financially. I will find partners to invest money into those projects as well, so that there is a music budget to work with.
Interesting. You know, from the point of view of being a music supervisor today, what would you say is the biggest misconception that people have about music supervisors or the role of music supervisors in film and TV?
I think that they pick all of the songs. We don't pick all of the songs. I mean, the dream job for me is a director knows exactly what he or she wants. And you look at it, one script I read had loads of Bright Eyes songs in it. And every song that the director had picked was perfect. It was Elliott Smith and the National and everything. So there, in a situation like that, you're trying, the biggest satisfaction comes in fulfilling the vision of the filmmaker. And say there are 10 songs in a film, the supervisor, you know, in an ideal world to me would only pick 3 of them. They'd say, you've got all these covered, I can clear them for the money, we've worked out the deals, these are great. You may find an alternative for a big song that's too expensive, but you're kind of filling in the gaps because it's their film, it's not my film. So I think that's the misconception, is that I'm picking every single song, it's totally up to me. That's not how it works. Okay. You're hired by the producers to work for the director.
Okay. Can you talk about any of the distinctions that you have from personal experience in supervising a film versus a TV show versus a commercial?
Yeah, commercials I find a bit of a nightmare because you have 6 or 7 people that are often creatives who are paid a wage to have an opinion. So you'll often get loads of different opinions. Some people, everybody has to have an opinion. So they may just say, I don't like this, and it throws it in. So often you'll be told you want to have something like temper trap or something, and you go through this whole rigmarole of doing this so everybody's happy with it. And then it turns out in the end that the client then wants to do Puccini at the end. And you've spent weeks and weeks and weeks doing this, and you know, it's very difficult. So I find the advertising world, there's a lot more talking, and it's very difficult to talk about music. So I find commercials can be very frustrating because they know what they want, but they don't know what they want, and they all have opinions. TV is interesting because it's so fast-paced. People have very little time to change their mind. You've literally got to hand everything in on Friday. You put songs forward that you can clear. They're good, they work, they've got to go in. So TV is much faster paced. My preferred medium is film because I might have 7 months to put my idea across or try things out, and things can change and everything. But it's a much more, as a creative process, working on movies is great if you have the correct interaction with the director, which sometimes you don't. You know, but usually you do.
Okay. You know, one of the things that I found in music over the last, let's say, 10 years, especially in television, is that there seems to be, and I'm curious if this is your opinion too, there seems to be a wider variety of music being used in television than perhaps a decade ago. Do you find?
I'm not sure. I think television's always been the breaking medium. I remember coming to this country when I was managing a band. I played them to all the big guys in England, trying to get them a deal. They were like, well, it's not really Kylie Minogue. And I was like, no, it's completely different. It's a brand new sound. I moved to America, got them the Grey's Anatomy theme tune, we made $1 million in syncs. We did 35 syncs. We had Volkswagen commercials because they just hit the zeitgeist. It was dangerous, slightly dangerous, but a beautiful pop vocal. So back then I found it refreshing that a music supervisor could go, I love this song, I'm going to try and put it in, as opposed to, what's the marketing spend behind this song? Is it being released all over the world? Are Universal putting money into it? Being able to choose on the basis of the song is a great thing. So I think TV's always been very progressive. I think it's the dream medium nowadays because a lot of directors are preferring to direct TV shows because it gives them more, they have more control over it, you know? So I think that, but in TV, a director doesn't pick the music, it's the showrunner. That's a different thing. But I think, to answer your question, I think it's always been pretty diverse as to what they'll take. You know, a TV show was much more likely to take a dubstep track 10 years ago, which is when it started in Europe, as opposed to a film wouldn't touch it until about 3 years ago when Skrillex started doing his thing.
Okay. You know, one thing I'm curious about from your choices in terms of publishers, labels, the traditional choices, are you using any non-traditional choices? Or have you found music in non-traditional ways outside of labels or publishers for any projects that you've worked on as a supervisor?
Only by knowing artists. I know a lot of artists that maybe want publishing deals or, maybe want a record deal and they've got really good music that you can just license directly off them. So kind of like that. And there are a lot more boutique, smaller companies that have great music. They're very passionate people behind it. And they're trying to build artists' careers as well. So I think, but usually if there are big songs, you have to go to the majors and everything. But I think that the internet has changed things massively. I mean, there's so many people hit me up on LinkedIn and things saying, I'm a songwriter, I want to be part of this. And it's a big dilemma for me because I want them to be embraced into the community. But if I don't know their work, I can't justify it. Do you see what I mean? So it's a bit of a dilemma because my heart says I want them all to be LinkedIn if they want to be LinkedIn, but my head says, hold on a second, I can't I don't know if this person's even any good. And you try and check out people's music, but that's another misconception about music supervisors is we're very reactive, to sit down. I'm not going to go home in 2 hours and go, let me listen to 3 hours of new music. I just don't have time to do that. So you're often following leads from a director. That's a way that I've often got to a load of great music, a band I've never heard of that a director loves, and you find it, and then you find this new label that's really small, and they're great to work with.
In listening to your answer, what strikes me is the fact that, you're giving you're giving the reality of a music supervisor. You're giving the reality of not only the professional parameters and creative parameters, but also of the personal ones in terms of time. So in terms of what you do, how would you say, or what concrete steps would you advise to some of our watchers as to how to get a song to a music supervisor today? Are there things they can be doing that make your job easier?
Yeah, I mean, they have to really, the way forward. When I brought my bands here, I remember going to a sync company who represents the music. They don't own it. It's not a publisher. They just represent it and take a commission. And I remember they wanted it exclusively. I was a manager. I was like, I don't do anything exclusively. And I was like, what happens if there's a commercial in New York? And they were like, no, there's only a certain amount of people. So very quickly, I realized the problems with non-exclusivity is that suddenly I'd have this issue. Two people were telling me they both pitched the song for the same cue. Was I going to pay 40% commission? I'm not doing my band a good service. So you need to sign up with a company that pitches music to film and TV that's reputable. Now, a lot of them will only sign stuff they love. So if you're rejected and you do country and they maybe don't want country, they probably will want country because you need a broad band of genres of music to represent. But I think that you definitely need to sign up with one of those companies, like the Zincs, the Secret Roads, all of these companies that know what they're doing. They have the relationships with the supervisors and the publishers and all these other people. So that's definitely, you have to be in that world, because I will send them a brief and they'll send me 30 artists. I don't want one song from one person and two from another. I want 30 songs. I flip through. These 4 could work. I want to pitch these 4, pitch them. They like them, they don't like them. So you need bulk, but you don't need too much. And you need discerning people that are quality controlling what I receive to review.
Okay, that's great information. Andy, from a personal and creative standpoint, as far as your professional life goes, were there any books that you can remember reading coming into this business that you found, or films that you found particularly inspiring?
From a musical perspective or from a film perspective?
From both.
The Graduate, to me, is the best ever. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. Can you imagine if The Graduate came out now with Simon and Garfunkel's music on it and they didn't use that music in a trailer? Which is kind of what happens now. You've got all this great music in a film and it's never used in the trailer. So The Graduate was amazing for me because, again, it was done properly. I mean, there was all the stories about the fact that some of the songs weren't written and they suddenly went, hey, maybe we can release an album based around this. Another one is Apocalypse Now. Loved the Train Spotting. The music in that was fantastic, So there were a lot of films where I think it's just the taste in the music. But Apocalypse Now is the one that always endears me. Whenever I watch that movie, it's probably my favorite movie ever. Whenever I listen to the music in that movie, it freaks me out. It's just incredible. And it's so emotional. And I have this theory today with my little girls. They don't listen to music, they watch music. They'll be like, Daddy, let me see it. And I'll say, we're listening to it. But they need to see it. So it's almost, and it is, the sum of the parts with music in a scene is phenomenal. And I remember having a song called, I said to one of my artists, can you write a song on the piano? We've got all your guitar stuff, write a song on the piano. He called it Piano Song. Beautiful, haunting. He sounds a bit like Jeff Buckley. Very haunting voice. 3 years later, PJ Bloom phoned me up, said, please tell me you still own this song, Piano Song. And I said, yes. He said, I want to use it in the final scene of the end of the season for CSI. Okay? And he used it. And I said, how did you remember that song? He said, I typed in Piano Song because I was looking for piano and this song came in. And that use was that was possibly one of the best uses because the guy's wife was dying. He was in hospital. It was like, phenomenal. But again, the whole thing just elevated the moment of the piece because it was perfectly creatively put together.
All those elements came together. Another one that comes to mind in television where I felt a song and it worked. And it was hard because it was a 6-minute piece and they used all 6 minutes in the show was the closing scene for the final episode of 6 Feet Under.
Yeah, which there was they did a huge search for that. I remember that search for that song. I remember that. And
Alomar.
Yeah, and those guys again, but that was great. They, remember there was a Radiohead song used in a bonfire scene. It was like, but a good quality show, people don't have a problem with it, you know? It's when, you know, there's so much great TV made in America. I mean, phenomenal TV. You know, it really is out, you know, amongst, you know, Breaking Bad and, you know, The Wire and The Sopranos, among the best things you've ever seen. Yeah.
And
you know,
all of these and just were
phenomenal shows.
It's sort of the second golden age of television.
Yeah, and it's great. And that's why it's so exciting, because people want their music in these things, you know?
What about books?
Books, well, I think it's more like The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway. You could never make a movie out of that, because it's so about the narration. There's nothing really happening. A guy on a boat with a fishing rod that's having a rough time. So books, Perfume was a book. A Patrick Suskind book, written in German, translated into many languages. I don't know if you ever read it. It's a journal of a serial killer, which is not a great topic, but it was up there with Hemingway for me. You could smell this book, you could smell everything, you know. And then Tom Tykwer made the movie. I was always thinking only the French could make this movie, like a Jean de Florette or something, because they get into the real characters. And Tykwer made the movie and did a great job of it. It just didn't do that well. But again, I believe, Clockwork Orange, director of Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick, I think, looked at that movie and thought it couldn't be made. And I think Tykwer did a great job. But again, I'm not sure. I think the medium for that was the book. Do you see what I mean? I'm not sure, because it's what you imagine. It's your imagination. And when you see something, somebody's telling you what it looks like.
Exactly.
So it takes away a little bit of the magic.
So, what did you think? Some really valuable insights on placing your music into film and television from Andy, a leading music supervisor. So, insiders, question of the day. What were the most relevant things to you that Andy spoke about in our discussion regarding music supervision? Was it the actionable steps that you can take to get your music placed into film or TV? Or was it the biggest misconceptions regarding the role of a music supervisor? Or maybe it was something else that connected with you. If you have any ideas or experiences that you'd like to share regarding this video, we'd love to hear from you and connect in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to MUBUTV for more information on how to educate, empower, and engage your music career. You can also check out a summary of this episode, everything we talked about, in the YouTube description as well. And if you enjoyed this video, we'd really love it if you hit the like button and let us know what other kinds of videos and types of content you want to see on our channel. Hit us up in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.